Hello everyone, my name is John, I'm the Geeky Fanboy, and welcome back to Doctor Who Reviews. Today we are reviewing the 6th episode in the most recent series. Today we're taking a look at Rogue. If you should hear any muffled music noises or bass drums, that's my annoying neighbor upstairs who keeps playing loud music almost every single day, and this is the only time I have this week to film anything. So if you hear anything, apologies. Take it up with my stupid neighbors. So yes, today we are reviewing Rogue, an episode I was quite excited for because Jonathan Groff is our guest actor in this, and I like Jonathan Groff. If you've maybe seen some of my older videos, you know that I did a review for Mindhunter. He's one of the main characters in that show, so that's sort of where I know him from. So I was excited to see him now in Doctor Who as the titular character, Rogue. So this episode is set during the Regency era. We're dealing with early 1800s England. The Doctor and Ruby are living in their Bridgerton era, quite literally, because Ruby pointed out multiple times across the episode how Bridgerton this whole thing is. And as they are going about their business, the Doctor encounters a mysterious bat boy, if you want to use YA book terms, named Rogue, played by Jonathan Groff. So the Doctor is off to have a little flirtatious adventure with this bounty hunter who is looking for some mysterious creatures that have snuck into this time period to essentially be shapeshifters and act out Bridgerton. And meanwhile, Ruby is sort of hanging out with the rich upper class at the party they're attending, sort of trying to live her Bridgerton dream, but also trying not to get killed by those mysterious aliens. So that's the quick summary for this week's episode. As always, first couple of minutes spoiler free, and then I'm going to jump into some spoilers to talk details, but don't worry, I'll give you a warning beforehand. So you know how I've been saying I wished that we had more like classic Doctor Who episodes again, you know, with the Doctor and his companion just going on fun shenanigans-filled adventures where nothing big is happening, but it's just like, you know, a fun sci-fi time-traveling adventure. RTD heard me and gave me this episode. So yes, this is really like amongst like all these episodes we getting this series, a series that is not very long, this it's really like going back to basics, because the past couple of episodes have all had something like special or dealt with like a big theme, a big issue. So, the previous episode, Dot and Bubble dealt with this whole racism allegory. Well, not really an allegory, it was straight up there. Then 73 Yards was this very Dr. Light episode focused on Ruby. Boom was this very, was like bottle episode. And, the whole thing with the maestro was basically kind of a musical episode, or not really. And Space Baby so far was like the one relatively standard episode that we are used to from Doctor Who. And now we're going back to that with Rogue. And I'm honestly very, very happy about that, because the problem with this series is that it's short. It's much, much shorter than what we're used to, because usually we have a series that usually has like 12 or 13 episodes, and now this series is only 8 episodes long, which is a problem, because I love that Doctor Who does these like special episodes. You know, there's a Dr. Light episode, and there's an episode of focused on a very heavy socio-political issue. Then we're doing like a bottle episode. I love that Doctor Who does that. I honestly really do. But in between all these like special heavy episodes, you're missing like these kinds of episodes. Just the fun shenanigans episode that usually like are good relief, like in between all these like bigger, heavier episodes. And this series can't really do that because they're only 8 episodes. Because as far as I'm aware, right, like the next 2 episodes are going to like comprise the series finale, essentially. And I'm missing that structure that we usually get in like a 12, 13 episode filled series, where you have like one or two-parters, and you would have like maybe 3 or 4 episodes that focus on like really like bigger themes, more important themes, a bit more allegorical or something like that. And then usually in between you have like a fun shenanigans filled episode, and we don't have that. And you can really tell that this is what this series is sort of missing. Because this, watching Rogue, honestly just felt like a fun time. This episode wasn't the best one ever. It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't but it also wasn't terribly bad. We don't have a villain that's like the biggest, baddest, evil villain of all time. We just have a standard shenanigans-filled sci-fi Doctor Who adventure. That's essentially what we're getting in this episode. And honestly, I kind of love that. Like I said, this isn't fantastic. There are issues with this episode, but honestly, I don't mind them so much. Like, for me, the general vibe of this is I'm just having fun. I'm just having fun with this episode, essentially. Like, this is really one of those episodes I could see myself coming back to and just like putting on this episode if I just want to have like a fun time during the afternoon. If, you know, I just need some distraction and I put on a more lighthearted episode of one of my favorite shows. This is that kind of episode that I would put on. And honestly, I don't really want much more from that. So diving into like some details, obviously without spoilers at this point, let's talk about the characters. This is very much a more Doctor-focused episode after we had a couple of episodes now that were very Doctor-light, because Ncuti Gatwa had to also film some other stuff while he did Doctor Who. This one is very much focused on the Doctor and sidelines Ruby very hard. So this very much centers the Doctor and his blooming friendship and eventual relationship with Jonathan Groff's character, with Rogue. So the episode very much focuses on that. And Ruby doesn't really get to do a whole lot. That's like one of the bigger problems I maybe have with this episode, that Ruby honestly doesn't really do anything. Ruby is just there to make Bridgerton references, which were one or two too many, you could argue. She's basically just there to make Bridgerton references, to just like have fun and enjoy the historical setting, and then she like gets involved with like one side character, sort of, you know, which Doctor usually does. You know, the Doctor does his thing, then the companion does their thing. But this little side plot that Ruby has going on isn't really that important. It's not really that big, and it's basically just her talking to people, or almost just like one person. And she doesn't really do much else apart from like sort of towards the end when it's all about, you know, stopping the villain. That's like that's sort of an issue I have with this episode. I wish Ruby could have gotten involved more with the overall plot. I understand that this episode is trying to do like a romance plot for the Doctor, so of course he's hanging out more with this other guy. But it would have been fun to get Ruby more involved in the actual story with the actual villains, and just see her more on screen together with the Doctor, because these two actors, they have great chemistry. Honestly, they really do. They really do exude like this energy of they're good friends, they're having fun. Like, you really get that when they're on screen together. The thing is, the writing goes on about, oh hey, we're best friends, but this series hasn't really given us that much of them just hanging out being friends, which is also due to the fact that we don't really have that many episodes, and we don't really have many episodes of, you know, like this, just like them going out having fun space adventures. So we basically just had like them with space babies, and then the Maestro, we had all that, boom, was good. But then we had like some episodes where the Doctor was basically not there, or like in Dot and Bubble, they were sort of in the same room but didn't interact with each other. And then in this, it's like, oh hey, we're best friends, and I'm like, cool. And I'm getting that from the acting. I just wish we had seen more of them just hanging out, being friends together. I wish that would have been involved, like come up more, especially also in this episode, because we do see them sort of like having fun in the beginning, and then they just get split up relatively early. And then Ruby gets mostly sidelined, so you're like, okay, Ruby doesn't really have anything to do. And so every time her part of the story was on, I was like, yeah, I just want to go back to the Doctor and his new boyfriend. Essentially, that's sort of what you were waiting for this entire time. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Doctor and Rogue. First off, I still enjoy Ncuti Gatwa in this role. I think he has great charisma, great energy. He's just an overall great actor, I think, also, like, particularly in this role. And the Doctor's really just out there having fun this episode. And he meets this guy called Rogue, played by Jonathan Groff, and immediately just like sort of clocks him as, oh, he's a bit different, and he tries to find out what sort of his deal is. And I mean, that's not really a spoiler. Like, Rogue is basically like a bounty hunter, and he's there to find some aliens, essentially. And at first, the two act sort of like as adversaries towards each other until they like sort of course, slowly realize, oh no, we could actually help each other. And then from that, a relationship develops. They're quite flirtatious, almost from the get-go. You could argue basically just like from scene one, the two of them are flirting, which it's okay. Personally, I think, and I'm saying all of this as someone who usually is not really into romance. I'm not a romance guy. I don't really like watching or reading romances. I'm ace and demi-romantic, so, you know, not heavily involved in the romance. But I was sort of excited for this because it's just fun to like see the Doctor have fun for himself, essentially. But the romance in this, while great chemistry, that like these two are really hitting it off, and you bet your butt I was giggly. The overall like progression of the relationship is quite fast. Like they really go from, you know, meeting each other and sort of acting as enemies, but they're also flirting at the same time. Then they quickly move on to like trusting each other, showing each other their spaceships, holding hands, being flirtatious, almost kissing. You know, we go through that quite quickly in this episode, and I wished the episode, I know they just have like 45 or 50 minutes to really do this, but I wish there would have been a way to like make it seem like a bit more natural, like the progression of this relationship that we're seeing. It also sort of clashes with some aspect of the Doctor as a character, I think, because the Doctor really is just mostly hanging out with Rogue in this episode. And like I said, Ruby is not really doing much, and that is also due to the fact that the Doctor is sort of ignoring Ruby for large parts of this story. Like, sometimes without naming any specifics, but sometimes there will be moments where he's just like hanging out with Rogue or explaining stuff to him, and you're like, isn't Ruby potentially in danger? Shouldn't he do something about that? No, he's just flirting with this guy he just met, and you're like, I mean, good for you and you're having fun, but also there's this girl you promised to look after who's potentially in danger. So yeah, that's sort of like a nitpick, like with the Doctor's personality in this episode. Like I've seen some people say that the Doctor sort of acts out of character in this, which I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, the episode certainly very heavily wants you to like get involved with this relationship that the Doctor is forming in this episode, and then he's sort of like really just focusing on that and not much else. But you know, a part of me is just happy to sort of like see the Doctor having a fun, like out there flirty romance, and it's a gay romance at that, which we haven't really like seen in that way in Doctor Who before. Like, we've seen the Doctor when he was presenting as a man, we've seen him kiss other men before, like Christopher Eccleston's Doctor kissed Captain Jack Harkness, but we've never really seen like this kind of flirtatious relationship where it's, you know, really out there to be romantic and flirtatious and queer. So that was really nice to see that them just embracing that, and like I said, the chemistry between the actors like really sells this, I think. So it was really just fun to see the Doctor have fun. Like, I know there are some people out there who are not a fan of the Doctor getting involved in any kind of romantic relationships. I'm also personally not the biggest fan of it. Like, I'm okay like with Rose and the Doctor, because that sort of had had a build-up over multiple episodes. I wasn't really like the biggest fan of hot take. I don't hate it, but I'm not the biggest fan of like the Girl in the Fireplace, the Madame de Pompadour storyline. I think we also have Astrid and Voyage of the Damned. Didn't like that at all. I'm also not the biggest fan of River Song. Like, I don't mind her, but I'm certainly not as excited about her or her storyline as some other people are. So with this, I don't know. I'm sort of buying it. I'm just having fun alongside the Doctor, really. And Rogue, I think, is a really fun character to talk a bit more about him. Like Jonathan Groff, of course, great actor. If you've seen him in Hamilton or in Mindhunter or in the Matrix Resurrection movie, which I recently rewatched, actually, he's good in that one too. Like Jonathan Groff, great actor. They have great chemistry, and I think Jonathan Groff brings like this quiet sense of charisma to this role. I've heard some people say, also speculate before the episode aired, that Rogue might be a version of Captain Jack Harkness, that Jonathan Groff was recast to replace John Barrowman or something, or that Rogue is a version of that character. And a lot of people have said, oh, Rogue is like really, really similar to Captain Jack Harkness. It's super irritating. And I guess I can kind of see that, but also not really. Like, I would say that, yes, there are like surface level similarities based on like the overall vibe of the character. And this would also add to this feeling that I've had for the series that Russell T Davies retreads old ground that we've seen in the original series 1 from 2005. And I've been complaining about that. We're retreading a lot of old ground, and the sort of Captain Jack Harkness-esque character feels a little bit like it. However, I personally feel like Rogue is his own person. He's very different from Captain Jack Harkness if you like really look into this character. Because Rogue, while he is charismatic, he's not as extrovert. He's not as outgoing. He's much more like arguably shy, reserved, not as outgoing. He's like not outwardly flirtatious like Captain Jack is. Like, where Captain Jack would like just go out, flirt with everyone he meets, even if he doesn't know them, has no problem with just like going out there. Rogue, much more reserved. Like, when he first meets the Doctor, he like tells him to bugger off, essentially, and isn't like really this open, charismatic, flirtatious person that we're used to from Captain Jack Harkness. So honestly, I don't really see why people would say that they are basically the same character, because they're not. Like, if you watch the episode, you can really tell these are different characters. And personally, I really like Rogue. Honestly, like he has great chemistry with the Doctor, and it's sort of nice it's always kind of interesting to have a character who's like arguably a bit more morally grey, or at least morally different compared to what the Doctor usually thinks and believes. And they have like fun, flirtatious banter, and it's nice to see that, Rogue sort of puts up this facade almost of like he is this sort of like brooding, reserved kind of like bounty hunter who's just out there to get the monster and be done. But then you find out, what his name is actually based on, and that he's kind of a nerd, and has a bit of like stuff going on in his past and all that. And then you realize, oh no, there's actually a lot more going on to this person. And I would love to see, I would love to see this character return at some point. I really, really hope that happens. Also, just because these two characters have really good chemistry, I think. So Rogue is hunting for a bunch of aliens that are essentially shapeshifters, like these bird-esque creatures that we've seen in the trailers. And they are fine. They're like serviceable one-off villains. They're not really much to write home about. They're just there to be like the villain of the week, to create some chaos, to create a reason for Rogue and the Doctor to bond and share some fun scenes together. There's not really much to say about them. Like, honestly, I don't mind them. They're a bit like more out there. They're a bit more campy again, I think. because they're really like all about, like dressing up and transforming into other people. They're really all about that, and they're really leaning into it. They're calling in the episode, they call this sort of transforming, that they do cosplay, which is not really what they do, strictly speaking. It's LARPing. Just saying. But it sort of plays into this theme that sort of like runs throughout the episode, that there are people there who are pretending to be other people. They're sort of like, acting out Bridgerton, pretending to be other people. So there's like a bit of a theme going on there. And the villains, I think, fine. Honestly, fine. The way they get dealt with by the end, without going into spoilers here, felt unnecessarily contrived, to be honest, but you can sort of kind of see it coming. Going, like, if you've seen other episodes that have similar beats, you can sort of see where this is going. And could you have solved this differently? Definitely, you could have. Like, again, there's like some bending of like the personality of the Doctor and Ruby as well, where you're like, well, normally they wouldn't do this, and now this just happens, so this kind of ending or the defeat of these villains can happen. Yeah, of course you could do it differently, but then again, like I said, it's this kind of episode where where you're just like sitting down, having fun, don't really think too much about it. It's not that deep, bro, as they say. So I can't really complain about it, to be honest. Before we jump into spoilers here, good, fun episode. I honestly had fun with it. Not the best one out there, but also not terrible. This is honestly just what I wanted, like, before the finale. Just like a fun, shenanigans-filled time travel episode where the Doctor meets a mysterious stranger and has a fun romance while also defeating some transforming aliens. Honestly, good, light-hearted fun. I could see myself very well rewatching this episode at some point in the future just to have a good time. And now quickly, just gonna jump into a couple of spoilers just to point out some details that I enjoyed. So here's your warning in case you haven't seen the episode yet, and then you can come back later. So yeah, let's talk about some more details here. So we have this whole Bridgerton thing in this. I've heard some people complain about it, that, the episode leans a bit too hard into the whole Bridgerton vibe, that, it gets called out a lot, that it very heavily relies specifically on what the TV show Bridgerton is like. Personally, I don't really know. I haven't watched Bridgerton. I think I watched like 1 or 2 episodes of series 2 without any context for series 1. So I'm not really familiar with Bridgerton, that's what I'm saying, so I didn't really get that. But also Doctor Who has relied on other, like, at the time, contemporary TV shows before, like this whole finale of series 1, for example, that we get like with Big Brother and The Weakest Link. Like, Doctor Who has done this kind of stuff before. So I don't really get the complaint that hey, Doctor Who has never over-relied on contemporary television or movies. I'm like, of course Doctor Who has done that, of course they have. Yeah, like I mentioned also in the spoiler-free part, I do think it gets mentioned 1 or 2 times too often that, oh, this is just like Bridgerton. Like, yeah, they do mention that like a couple of times, even though 1 time would have been enough personally. And they do recreate certain scenes to, I guess, sort of get that vibe from Bridgerton. Like Ruby, like, sneaking up and listening to like this lover spat that the man and the woman are having, because it's very like Bridgerton-esque because of the relationships, and which lady is marrying what lord and all that. Like, it's really leaning into that, but not too heavily, I think. Like, it does feel, I guess, similar to Bridgerton, I would assume. It very much feels like a sort of slightly heightened sense of a historical setting. Where you can tell, I get what this is supposed to be, I understand what setting we're doing, but you can definitely tell, okay, yeah, no, they're doing like 1 or 2 things a little different, so this works in our fictionalized version of this setting, like a heightened sense of reality, you could argue. But I personally think that's alright. Another thing I just want to mention here real quick, Rogue gets his name from Dungeons and Dragons. That's adorable. I just honestly didn't expect that, because that's what I meant when I said he's like kind of a nerd and a geek. Like, he plays D&D, and I just love that, and I think it also adds to this theme that I mentioned. Role playing, pretending to be other people, dressing up, doing cosplay, doing LARPing. Like it sort of adds to this overall thing that we see throughout the episode, because the Doctor and Ruby are there to reenact Bridgerton. Basically, Ro gets his name from Dungeons and Dragons, a role playing game. He also sort of puts up this facade, not letting everyone see who he really is, and then we get these like bird aliens who are literally like LARPing people to death, essentially, and just are there to literally act out Bridgerton and to have fun and be like over the top, campy and cheesy. So there is a theme going on, which I kind of like, and I love that sort of like an over the top, slightly exaggerated, nerdy kind of topic that we're seeing here. So yeah, I kind of really enjoyed that aspect of the episode. I would like to talk a bit more about the ending. So the way these aliens get defeated is they get trapped in like this triangular trap that Rogue has used on the Doctor before, and the Doctor like reset it so it could capture it like max 6 people, I think. And Ruby gets trapped in it at the end because she's pretended to be one of the aliens. Now, why she didn't mention earlier that she's human, that she's the normal Ruby? Again, that's what I meant earlier when I said it feels kind of contrived, this ending. That's one of those aspects. And of course, Ruby ends up being in the triangle, and the Doctor feels like he can't press the button to send the aliens away, because then he would let Ruby do it as well. Oh, I remember slightly before that, because the Doctor thinks this isn't the real Ruby. He thinks Ruby has died or has been taken by the shapeshifting aliens. And I love that slightly before that, before the trap is set, he asks Rogue for how long do these aliens live, and Rogue says like they have a lifespan around 600 years. And just like very cold, the Doctor says 600 years, good, it's a long time for them to suffer, because he thinks they killed Ruby. And I was like, ooh, Doctor, your 10 is showing. Your David Tennant Doctor is showing. I like that, because it's a slight hint at, yes, while the Doctor has healed a bit with his previous generation, with the bi-generation, there is still very much some underlying darkness there. And I love that we saw that. So then this leads to the whole trap scene. Ruby gets trapped in the triangle. It's contrived. The Doctor, obviously devastated, doesn't know what to do, doesn't want to get rid of Ruby, but also doesn't want to let those aliens go. And Rogue talks to him. And this is where we actually get the kiss between Rogue and the Doctor, which was very sweet, bittersweet almost. I'm going to come back to another scene with them that I liked as well. But yeah, they kiss. I love that you can tell that, yes, well, it is a means to an end for like Rogue to take the trigger. You can also tell it's very much intended to be like romantic in that moment, and I love that Doctor Who's really leaning into that. And then Rogue takes the trigger for the trap, pushes Ruby out, so he can stand in her place, and then says, "Find me," to the Doctor, and then traps himself with the aliens in a faraway dimension. Why the Doctor didn't do that, why he didn't like run in to save Ruby, why this was even possible, that Rogue could just push Ruby out and stand in her place, I didn't get that. That was kind of confusing why that was a thing they could do. Again, this is what I meant with you could sort of see where this was going, because of course Rogue couldn't stay around to like travel with the Doctor, so of course we have to come up with a reason for him to like sacrifice himself, or for him to have a reason to like stay somewhere else or something. So that's the reason they come up with. And it tells the Doctor to go find himself and to go find him. And like we see the Doctor like taking the ring that Rogue offered him during the dance scene, which is where I want to mention the dance scene, the sequence between them, gorgeous. I loved it. It was like the choreography, great. I think they got the same choreographer that they also use in Bridgerton, which was fun. But I loved just the way that was shot, that, it sort of like really focuses in on them. Everything else becomes dark, like it really just focuses on them. They're like really in the moment, lost in each other's eyes, essentially. Like you could really feel the romantic tension there and the romantic connection, which I loved. And I love that they essentially use the times that era's bigotry for their own use, because the Doctor would know that two men dancing in the Regency era would cause somewhat of a scandal because homophobia. I love that they take the agency for themselves and then use other people's homophobia for their own gains, which I thought was kind of a neat idea. So during that scene, the Doctor got this ring from Rogue, and now at the end, after Rogue is gone, the Doctor like puts the ring on his finger, which very much reads like he is gonna try and fulfill that promise that he will one day try and find Rogue, that he will keep looking for him. So I took that sort of like as a promise, with him putting the ring on, that the Doctor definitely still has some sentiment for this man, which I loved. And then at the very end, we get like this short scene between between Ruby and the Doctor, which I thought was really interesting because Ruby can clearly tell that the Doctor just lost someone who was close to him, who he liked, who he was arguably in love with. And this is a loss that hits him deep. But the Doctor, of course, always like puts his shield up, tries to laugh the problem away, but Ruby can like look straight through that and asks him if he's okay. And he's like, yeah, of course I'm okay. I'm having fun. We're having adventures. I'm laughing. And Ruby is just like, no, stop. You're not fine. I'm gonna give you a hug because you're not fine. And she just like hugs him. And again, great acting here from Ncuti Gatwa. You could just see how the Doctor, like, it really takes him a minute for him to, like, he's still angry and it takes him a minute to like really like feel the impact of the hug, to like truly allow himself to be in that moment, to be vulnerable. And then he sort of accepts the sentiment that Ruby is trying to give him. Like, I really like that you could see that, you know, the Doctor still has sort of like his problems showing his emotions, that he puts his shield up as we're used to, and that Ruby just tries to break through that with the hug, and that it does take the Doctor a moment to like accept that and allow himself to be vulnerable. I thought that was a good moment there to end the episode. And like I said, I really want Rogue to come back. I honestly do hope that they're able to like somehow include him at some point. That would be really fun. Like maybe he returns in like a special, or if not that, maybe at the very end before Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor regenerates, maybe he's able to find him. I don't know. It would be real sad to like see this fun character that Doctor has such a good connection with, to see him go after just one episode. So I do hope Jonathan Groff can make a comeback as this character at some point in the future. So yeah, to sum this whole thing up, fun episode. Maybe not as thought-provoking as some of the other episodes have been in this series, but I honestly don't mind that. This is exactly what I wanted. I just wanted a fun, more or less light-hearted, shenanigans-filled episode. I love that for once it's just the Doctor out there having a fun one-off romance, having fun for himself. Honestly, I love that for him. Good for him. Ruby gets sidelined. Yes, that's a bit of a problem, I think, especially because the episode is like, oh, they are best friends, and you're like, they're not even hanging out. Some of the elements are a bit contrived, don't make sense. There are little flaws and issues, but that I personally didn't mind as much, because it's not, this episode's not trying to be like super out there. It's not trying to be super complex. It's just there to give you like, honestly, just a fun sci-fi adventure, and that's what I got, that's what I wanted, so I can't complain. So that's it for this Doctor Who review. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts and opinions on this episode, please do tell me down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done it already, and I'll see all of you very soon. Goodbye.